Welcome to the InfoMullet YouTube channel. If you enjoy this content, please like or share. And if you'd like to support the InfoMullet by becoming a mulleteer, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate your support. To the stimulus update. So last time we were on, there was a lot of concern about what was going on with the stimulus negotiations. Well, I can report there are no stimulus negotiations because Congress went home and the president signed an executive order. Two of the elements of that executive order, again, the links for this are down, are not, I mean, it was kind of a halfway measure with a limited time duration. And so one of the things, the two main elements that people were looking for was an extension of the unemployment benefits above and beyond the payment amount, the amount you made from the job. There was an additional $600 a week provided by the federal government, and this was considered key for not just making people whole for the lost job, but helping for the downturn in the economy. Again, this is very different. There's no moral hazard question when it comes to a pandemic. It's a crater. It's like a meteorite hit the US, right? Or an army invaded. You have to fill the hole. So even though I am fiscally conservative, I'm generally in favor of things like this because that's the role of, in emergency situations, that's a valid, legitimate role of government. Well, it was $600 a week, and there were various competing proposals. The Democrats wanted to keep that $600 a week through January. The Republicans wanted to drop it to $400 a week and drop it further. Neither side agreed, so the president signed an executive order, and that one did a real tricky thing. It said states can choose to a $300 or $400 extra a week, but the state would have to chip in $100 if they went for the 400 option, and the funding that would come from this is not guaranteed for the entire duration of which it's supposed to be. And so there's a lot going in there. Let's unpack this. Because the president has limited authority, he was trying to navigate, well, he or whoever put it together was staying within the authorities he had. And so the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, is the one administering this unemployment program because why not? We'll put FEMA in charge of unemployment. That makes sense. But anyways, FEMA's administering this program. There's a bucket of money. States have to sign up for it. And once they sign up, they're on the hook for paying for the duration of the unemployments, even if the money in FEMA's bucket runs out. They also can decide, are they just going to take the $300 a week federal, or are they going to do the $400 where they have to put $100 in? And so the Associated Press did a survey of the states. And as of this last Monday, 18 states have said they'll take the federal grants and they'll start issuing unemployment. I haven't heard of any unemployment being issued yet in that regard, so the money's still coming through. But 30 states are still evaluating, and 2 have said no. And this is not a partisan thing. It's a fairly bipartisan. You've got, in North Carolina, there's the Democratic governor wanting to get the $400 plan, but the Republican lawmakers in the state weren't, the legislature, which needed to pass it, they weren't sure they were able to, back the amount that this would cost the state. And that's a problem. These state budgets have been absolutely hammered by the pandemic. Sales tax is down, all sorts of tax and revenue is down, and they're having to sustain all this unemployment. And, Mississippi, the Republican governor of Mississippi just said, no, it's too expensive altogether. They can't afford it. They're not doing it. These states are getting to the point where they're having to, we talked very early on about states needing to use the federal as a backstop for loaning money to afford the unemployment because their funds were not well funded. And we did a map of, I think it was like 30-something states didn't have sufficient funding. Well, now, 6 months into this, 10 states are now actively taking loans just to pay the state benefits. This isn't the thing on top of it. And another 8 states have received authorization for loans but haven't used it yet. So we're looking right now, basically 14 states are on unemployment life insurance where they're borrowing the money from the federal government to pay the state level unemployment benefits to the people because their funds that they had weren't built up enough prior to the pandemic, even though we had a very long run from the last financial crash. You think 2012 to 2018 or 2019, that was your period to rebuild your reserves. Very few states did that. The second big part of that executive order was the payroll tax deferral. And I'm using the word deferral very intentionally because the president does not have the authority to waive the payroll tax. Only Congress can, and specifically the House, because the House controls the purse. If you look in the Constitution, all revenue-related bills have to start with the House. But the president can issue a deferral that you don't have to collect it at a point in time. So what the executive order would do is it said a two-part opt-in. One, businesses would first have to opt in, and then second, employees themselves would have to opt in. And if they opt in, their payroll tax portion, which is usually about 7.5% of their income up to the Medicare max, which is like 106,000, 108,000, something like that. That part they wouldn't pay now. It would be deferred until a tax bill next year. And this is the key part. It's not free money. It's basically a no interest loan with a due date a year out. Now, this is done in part because I think the president believes that when Congress comes back, they will simply waive the payroll tax for this period, and so you wouldn't have to pay it back. But not unexpectedly, the businesses have rejected this. I mean, we're talking now about, let me list them here, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the National Retail Federation, and the National Association of Manufacturers. These are large, very well representative business lobby groups. They've said no. They've encouraged their members not to accept this payroll because they think it's unfair to their employees to basically, hey, you're getting this free money, but you're going to have to pay it a year later. Plus, implementing the systems where you have now an opt-in at the business and an opt-in at the individual is very costly and expensive. And this would all run out within a couple months anyway. So they said, no, get Congress back in session, negotiate the damn stimulus bill, and come to a better solution. So the executive order that the president signed, the two main features of it are falling apart right as, you know, the unemployment benefits expired late July, I think it is. And, you know, we're heading into this headwinds now. So I think we're going to potentially see some economic hardships here. Ed says, bonus, if you take the deferral and it's not forgiven, there's talk it could be considered 2020 income, which you then have to pay income tax on, as well as paying back the deferred taxes. That's usually how it works. If you defer a tax payment, that counts as, I mean, income counts as income, right? It's not a secret thing. If you get money that's not taxed, that's income. So yeah, you would have to pay income tax on it according to your normal income tax rate. It would, you know, and that varies. But then you would also have to pay the amount back. Thanks everyone for blocking the spammer. I think the Swedes are getting back at me by attacking me with spammers is what I think is going on. With the evictions, Tricia, there's been a, HUD has made an order. So what Tricia's talking about is there was an eviction moratorium that was in place as part of the stimulus package that didn't get renegotiated when Congress left. It's now expired. And I'm not sure if the president ordered it or the HUD secretary ordered it or someone in HUD ordered it, but HUD has the administrative authority to defer evictions across a wide swath. HUD's the Housing and Urban Development. They control the Fair Housing Practices, Fair Housing Acts, and most rental policies flow up underneath them. I saw that they had done an extension on the moratorium, but it wasn't clear with what authority they did it and how long it will last. So I think it's more of a bridging mechanism than it is, and it may only apply to HUD administered properties. I don't know if it's, for example, Section 8 housing and things like that, or it applies broadly. So I'll have to check in and look at that. Is there any chance of getting Congress back to pass a COVID aid bill? In a campaign year, no, I don't think so. Even though no one can campaign. I mean, I'm like, bring Congress back and go do your Zoom chat, you know, in a non-taxpayer funded closet nearby or something like that. I just think given it's a presidential campaign year, I don't think they're going to be back to negotiate. They never got close when they left over the summer. And the Senate and House versions were still pretty far apart. Now, Trump has signaled some willingness to move on certain things, but there's other things he's not willing to move on. So unless it comes back and becomes one of these political campaign footballs where, in addition to just trying to do the parts of the stimulus that's needed, both sides are trying to get a leg up on the other and make the other look bad, I'm not holding out too much hope. Yeah, and Jay's bringing up the $600 kicker was last applied to the week ending July 25th. So we're almost a full month in. Next week will be a full month in for that $600 evaporating. And we're going to see that in increased, you know, a flow effect as it hits the rest of the economy. So thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to follow the InfoMullet, visit us on Facebook or Twitter. And if you'd like notifications when we post new video content, click on the red subscribe button below the video. If you've ever wanted to become a mulleteer and support the InfoMullet, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate the support.